This video is going to focus more on women. One video ago, I made a video about men, what it means to be a man, right? What it means to be masculine, right? In this video, I would like to talk more on the woman. Since that video was only focused on men, I thought it would be fair to make a video where it's only focused on the woman. So let's begin. I would like to start this by saying, women, you should keep being independent. Okay, independent. So I've seen this trend lately on social media where, we already know women are trying to be independent, right? But there have been some women who gave up on it, right? I don't know if you have seen this, but there's some women are basically saying that they're tired. They've been grinding for years. They've been told her whole life to be independent, and she doesn't need a man. She can do it all on her own. And now she's saying no, she wants a man, right? And if you look at the comments, they're all just making fun of her, right? They're like mocking her, right? They're basically, when she says, I don't want to be independent anymore, I want a partner, I need help, right? And the comments are like mostly from men, basically laughing, right? Saying things like, oh, so now you need a man, don't you? Where's all the independence now, huh? Stronger than independent? What happened? Told you so, right? They're basically laughing at it. Right? Like, it's not something to really be laughing at. I see it and I'm like, come on, guys, I don't think we should be laughing at this. I think it is a problem. And here's what those commenters don't understand, right? And if you're one of those guys who maybe laughed at those things, I think this video will maybe teach you something new. I think a lot of the people think that they're witnessing like this failure of independent women, right? A woman admitting that they were wrong, that they wanted independence in the first place, right? But here's the thing. Making fun of that isn't gonna help anybody. And my message to women who feel this way, who no longer want independence, is independence is not easy, but do not give up on independence. Not because I know it's difficult, but you should not give up on independence. Another thing to mention is that independent does not mean no partners. You can be independent and still have a partner. So I'm gonna go in depth and try to explain everything from the start. So first of all, let's talk about, if you're a woman who no longer wants to be independent, right? Let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about why women wanted to be independent in the first place, right? Why do women say be independent? Why is that, right? Why do they say it to other women, right? It's not just some arrogance, right? It wasn't just like rejecting the partners, right? You can still have a partner by being independent. And it was more about like survival, right? Like I would say for generations, maybe not every generation, but for some generations, women were like financially dependent on the men, right? By necessity, right? Not by choice. They couldn't open bank accounts without a husband. They couldn't get mortgages, right? And they couldn't build careers the same way men could, right? And that dependence was tough for women, right? If you were in a bad relationship, an abusive relationship, or like neglectful relationship, or or a relationship where your partner doesn't respect you or something, right? You can't leave. How can you leave? You don't have any money. You don't have any resources, right? You don't have any options whatsoever, right? It's like a trap, basically, right? So independence kind of changes that, right? So women basically fought for the right to work, to earn money and stuff, right? To own property and stuff, right? And can open bank accounts and stuff, right? And the main thing is to build careers, right? And after doing that, now women have options. And I think the point of all of this was not about like men are bad, it was more about like I don't want to be trapped. That's what it's all about, right? And I'm sure that there were some feminists who genuinely hated men, right? But I think majority of them just wanted to be independent, right? I don't think they genuinely hate men. I think they just want to be not trapped, right? And being independent means you can leave a bad situation, right? If you have a bad partner, you can leave. You have options. That's what independence is about, right? It's not really about not wanting a partner, right? It's not a rejection partner. It's actually the opposite way. A healthy partner, I think, requires independence. So if that's the case, why are we seeing some women publicly giving up on independence, right? Why are they saying, I don't want to be independent anymore, right? I want a husband. First thing that they're getting wrong is independence does not mean you can't have a partner. You can still have a partner, right? But what's I think basically happening is that, you know, being independent is always going to be hard, right? It's always going to be exhausting. It's very expensive too. If you're alone, if you're alone, it's very hard. You'll have to work, right? Work every day except for weekdays. Some people probably work weekends too, and you have to pay your own bills. There's no safety net. You basically on your own, right? There's no one to share the emotional load with, right? And when people spend a long time like that, I do think they get kind of tired, right? They see their friends getting married, right? Their friends are getting married, but they're not. And obviously, they will eventually go to this conclusion that maybe independence was bad. Maybe I should have wanted a partner. Maybe I should have went for a partner instead of a career, right? And it's not being weak. I think it's just being human. It's hard. Everyone's having a hard time these days. And if you're a woman who's exhausted, right? If you're a woman who's lonely and like you're desperate, right? You're not really making a decision from a place of strength now, right? You're making a decision from a place of need. And if you now say, okay, let's give up on this independence thing, let's just look for this partner who can like feed me, right? That can, take care of me, right? That is exactly how you go into bad relationships. That is the root of most bad relationships is desperation. So let me explain why giving up on independence is the wrong move, okay? When you decide you can't do it alone anymore, right? That you need a partner because you're tired, your finances are stretched, right? You're lonely, right? You're looking through the lens of desperation now. And desperation is bad because it lowers your standards, right? Your standards are gonna be on the ground when you're desperate. It's gonna inevitably happen if you're so desperate. You're gonna start overlooking red flags because you want a partner, right? You start excusing like bad behaviors that your partner might have. Usually you would never tolerate them, but because you're so desperate and insecure, you want a partner, so you would tolerate these bad behaviors, right? Well, my partner's not perfect, but at least I won't have to do this alone anymore, right? And once you tolerate those bad behaviors, you're reinforcing them, right? And that's exactly how people end up in bad relationships that hurt them, right? You're gonna start having relationships with partners who don't respect you, right? Who try to take advantage of you, right? And those relationships are gonna be worse than being single. It's better to struggle alone than like be abused by someone, right? Being in a bad relationship is gonna be way worse than being alone. Alone, at least you have peace, right? You have control over your life. But if you're in an abused relationship, now you have no control, you have no peace, right? Bad relationship is just full of chaos, stress, it's gonna drain your energy, your money, right? You're probably gonna have less money than you were single, right? Because you gave up your independence to get there. And now leaving that is gonna be very hard. So women who are, giving up on independence and then rushing into this relationship out of just sheer desperation is they're not solving their problem, dude. You're just going from a lion's den to a tiger's den, right? You're going from one problem to another one. So before we talk about what to do about this, if you're in this situation, let's first of all break down two things, okay? Independence isn't just one thing, okay? Independence means two things, actually: financial independence and emotional independence, okay? So financial independence, everybody knows, right? This is the one that like everybody talks about: having your own money, right? Your own job, your own income, right? Your basically own ability to pay your bills, basically, without relying on somebody else. That's what you call financial independence, right? And to be financially independent, it requires a lot of discipline, right? Tons of discipline. I mean, you can't be financially independent if you spend everything you make, right? You can't be financially independent if you can't budget, right? To be financially independent, you can't be giving into impulse purchases, like subscriptions or like clothes or whatever, right? So yeah, to be financially independent is not really just about like how much money, how much your salary. It's about the how you manage what you have. That's what I think is like, that's what I would call financial independence. Right. So now let's talk about emotional independence. Okay. Now this is something that people don't really talk about when they say independence. Okay. So let's assume a woman is like she is financially independent. She is rich, right? But if she's not emotionally independent, then she will seek a partner. So let's talk about this. Emotional independence means being able to find happiness, meaning, and fulfillment, okay, from within yourself, only yourself, without a partner, okay? It means like having this passion and goal without a relationship, okay? Feeling like your life is worthwhile, even when you're like alone, single, okay? So emotional independence is basically what stops you from being desperate for a partner, okay? It's not financial independence that does it, it's actually emotional independence, okay? And just like financial independence, emotional independence requires discipline. It requires building habits. It requires like choosing yourself, like finding some kind of hobbies or passions, right? And if you have passion and something that you love doing, right, you won't really be desperate for a partner, right? So if you can be financially and emotionally independent, that is when you will not be desperate, okay? But if you are not emotionally or financially independent, then you will start to be desperate. So let me first of all give you like an analogy, okay? Let's talk about, like just like how a woman wants to be independent from a man, right? Children wants to be independent from their parents, right? Because being with parents is sometimes tough, right? They yell at you, right? A lot of things, bad things can happen. And a lot of kids, they want to be independent from their parents, right? And they want their own place, right? They want to prove they can do it in their own way. So this child will have two routes, okay? Path one, discipline route. So let's assume this kid leaves his parents' house, decides he's going to be independent from their parents, and this kid says, let's assume he gets a job, he gets a budget, he learns a skill, right? And they cook at home instead of eating out. They save money, right? They build, right? And all of this is hard, so it's going to take a lot of discipline, right? But if this independent kid does this, they become more and more stable and more independent and eventually happy. But let's assume this kid doesn't do that. The path two is this kid has no discipline, but they still want to be independent, right? They buy things they can't afford, right? They don't track their money. They're broke. They're too lazy to study, too lazy to work, right? Too afraid to find a job, right? And now they're miserable, right? And then they call their parents and they say, Dad, Mom, I can't be independent anymore. This is too hard. Come save me. I don't want to be independent, right? You see the pattern here? You see something similar? The problem was not independence, was it? The problem was that the kid lacked discipline. So if you're a woman who's in a similar situation, who's, I want to be independent, and then you feel like it's being impossible, that's not an issue with independence. That's an issue with discipline, okay? Independence did not fail you. It was your discipline that failed you, okay? That is the difference. That is exactly what's happening with some women who are giving up on their independence. They didn't build discipline, right? So now, because they don't have discipline, they can't be financially independent. So then they start to feel like this whole independence thing was a lie. They don't want to do the hard work now. So they want to find this easy way of like just finding a partner, right? So the problem was discipline. So being financially independent is going to be simple. You need discipline, okay? If you can build a discipline, you will be financially independent, okay? Learn skills, work, find a job, work, build a business, whatever it is. If you have a discipline, you can be financially independent. So now let's talk about emotional independence, okay? Now this is a little bit different. It's not really about discipline, but it's a little bit different. So to be emotionally independent, you need a purpose, okay? Let's assume you're already financially independent now, but you're still so desperate for a partner. That means you're lacking purpose. You're lacking passion and purpose in life, okay? When you lack something like a passion, your brain starts to seek some kind of happiness, right? When you can't get that happiness from your passion, your brain assumes a partner will give it to you, right? That's why you're going to be desperate for a partner. And that is basically how you become emotionally independent. And another thing that I would like to talk about in the end is, here's the thing. You might say, hey man, if I become fully independent, does that mean I don't need a partner? But no, you can still want a partner, right? And here's the thing. The more financially and emotionally independent you are, the better partners you will find. The more financially and emotionally independent you are, the more attractive you are to people. Think about it, okay? So it's the other way around. You don't need to give away your independence to find a partner. It's the other way around. By being more financially and emotionally independent, you find better partners and you will be more attractive. Let me give you an example, okay? Let's assume you meet someone who's desperate, okay? They're not independent emotionally or financially, and they're so desperate, right? Who seems like they'll fall apart if you don't call them back, somebody who feels like, like a responsibility, right? They're not going to be attractive. If you're not going to be emotionally and financially independent, you're not going to be attractive because people can see that you're desperate, right? But if you meet somebody who's happy on their own, who has their own life, who doesn't need you, but might choose you, how does that feel? That person feels more attractive, right? It feels like a privilege to be with that person, right? And this applies to men and women equally. Doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. If you want a good partner, the best thing you can do is to become somebody who doesn't need a partner. Okay? If you want a partner, become someone who doesn't need a partner. Because then you will be more attractive to people because you don't look desperate. When you don't need someone, you can choose wisely. When you need a partner, desperate for it, then you ignore red flags, right? But if you don't need somebody, you won't ignore red flags. You will see these red flags and you won't choose them, right? So the women who are giving up on independence and like rushing into relationships, first of all, they're making themselves less attractive, right? Like for example, this woman in this TikTok video when she was complaining about how she doesn't want to be independent anymore. Do you see men like saying, "Wow, you're attractive"? No, they're not doing that. They're making fun of her. That's what they're doing. No guy is gonna date her, right? But being independent, on the other hand, attracts people who respect you. People who see you like a real person, right? So yeah, if you're a woman who's feeling tired, feeling like independence is too hard, feeling like if you just find a partner, everything else will like work. No, man, no. That's not how it works. You need to build discipline to be financially independent and find a passion so you can be emotionally independent. And once you do that, you will start attracting better people and you will start choosing better partners and you can have a partner too. So yeah, if you are in this situation, first recognize what you're really feeling, right? You're not tired of independence, okay? Independence is essential to both men and women, okay? You're just tired of doing it without discipline. You're just tired of the, chaos that comes from not having your finances in order, right? You're just tired of the emptiness that comes from not having this purpose or passion, right? The solution isn't to give up on independence, okay? If you give up, you're gonna find a bad partner, okay? The solution is simple. Become disciplined, find a passion, okay? Second, get your finances in order, okay? Discipline is not a personality trait. You're not born with it. It's not genetics. It's a skill. And like any skill, you can definitely learn it. Like make a budget, right? Always track your spending. Don't buy what you don't need. Always have emergency fund, right? It's not very exciting, but unfortunately, it's the only way to go. And if you're a man, you're the same. I just realized all of this advice applies to men as well. And third, like I said before, find something that gives you meaning and purpose. Not from a person, but something that you build, something that you create, right? Like some kind of hobby, maybe art, sport, or whatever, or freelancing, or whichever thing that gives you like happiness, right, from doing it, right? Some kind of goal that basically excites you, that I would say. And fourth is don't treat partnerships as a rescue, right? Partners are not a solution to your problems. They will make your problems even worse, okay? If you can't be happy alone, you're not going to be happy with a partner. I'm sorry. It's just how it is. And when you stop looking for a rescue, right, you stop accepting rescuers. Because if you're desperate for rescuers will start controlling you. Always remember that. And the fifth, I would say, is for men who are watching, this applies to all of you as well. It applies to both women and men. Because here's the thing, independence isn't just a woman's issue, it's a human issue, okay? Men who are desperate for a partner make the same mistakes too. They also overlook red flags. They also accept bad people, right? So yeah, we all need a discipline to build financial stability and a passion to have this emotional independence. I think everybody needs it. So, yeah, in the conclusion, I would say being independent does not mean you never want a partner, okay? It means you want a partner from a place of strength, not from a place of desperation. It basically means you can choose someone because they're good for you, not because you need someone to save you, okay? And it's not weakness. It's foundation of every healthy relationship, okay? So don't give up on independence, okay? Don't give up. And then choose someone that's worthy of what you built.